Sergeant Jake Miller stood in the corridor of the starship Starforge, looking at the assignment papers in his hands for the 10th time. The words had not changed. Alpha Squad, Elite Reconnaissance Unit, dangerous mission to planet Kepler 442b, and his name at the bottom of the list, the only human name among 4 alien species. Jake folded the papers and put them in his pocket. He had been a soldier for 8 years, but this was different. He had always served with other humans. Now he would be the only one of his kind in a squad of beings who could crush him with their bare hands. The door to the briefing room slid, open with a soft hiss. Jake stepped inside and immediately felt small. The room was designed for multiple species, with high ceilings and reinforced furniture. 4 figures turned to look at him as he entered. The first was Zexthar, a Vraxian warrior who stood nearly 8 feet tall. His body was covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. 4 powerful arms hung at his sides, each ending in clawed hands. His head was elongated, with compound eyes that could see in multiple directions at once. Jake had heard that. Vraxians were bred for war from birth. Next to Zexthar sat Lyra Moonwhisper, a Ceylani female. She was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly. Her large eyes were completely silver, with no visible pupils. Long white hair floated around her head as if she were underwater. The Ceylani were known for their telepathic powers and ability to control energy with their minds. The third member was Ruck, a golem from the Crystal Worlds. He was not quite as tall as Zexthar, but much wider. His entire body was made of living silicon crystal, dark gray with veins of blue light running through it. When he moved, Jake could hear the soft sound of crystal grinding against crystal. Golem were nearly impossible to hurt with normal weapons. The last member was Vera Swift, a Zenthari scout. She was closer to human size, but that was where the similarity ended. Her skin could change color like a chameleon, and right now, it matched the gray walls of the room. Her movements were so quick and smooth that she seemed to flow rather than walk. Her race could move faster than human eyes could follow. Jake walked to the empty chair at the table. It was clearly meant for humans, smaller than the others. He sat down and nodded to his new squad mates. "So you are the human," Zexthar said. His voice sounded like gravel in a cement mixer. "I do not understand why Command sent you to us." Lyra's voice was soft and musical when she spoke. "I can sense your thoughts, human. You are afraid, but you try to hide it. Why do they think you can help us?" Rock's voice was deep and slow. "Humans are weak. No natural armor. No special powers. No enhanced strength or speed. This makes no sense." Vera had been silent, but now she spoke quickly. "Maybe he's here to carry supplies, or to send messages back to Command when we die." Jake felt his face get hot, but he kept his voice calm. "I go where I'm ordered to go. Same as you." Before anyone could respond, the briefing room door opened. Again. Commander Thane entered, a Carillion officer with gray fur and yellow eyes. He was shorter than most of the squad members, but carried himself with the authority of someone who had seen many battles. "Alpha Squad, attention," Thane barked. Everyone stood except Rock, who simply straightened up. His crystal body was too heavy for quick movements. Thane activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed a planet with green and brown continents and blue oceans. "This is Kepler 442b. 3 days ago, our monitoring stations detected strange energy readings from the surface. The readings are unlike anything we have seen before." The display zoomed in to show a jungle area with a large geometric structure, visible through the trees. The building was made of dark metal and seemed to shift and change shape as they watched. "This structure appeared overnight," Thane continued. "Our satellites show it was not there one day. Then suddenly it was. The energy it produces is affecting our equipment from orbit. We need a team to investigate." Zexthar leaned forward. "What kind of energy?" "Weapons?" "Unknown. That is why we need Alpha Squad. You are our best reconnaissance unit." Thane's eyes moved to Jake. The mission parameters specifically requested human involvement. "Why?" Vera asked. her skin shifting to a pale yellow color that Jake guessed meant curiosity. Thane was quiet for a moment. Alliance intelligence believes this structure may be connected to the Forerunners, an ancient race that disappeared millions of years ago. Early reports suggest their technology responds differently to various species. Humans may have certain advantages. Lyra tilted her head. What advantages? I can read his mind and control energy. Zexthar is a perfect warrior. Rock cannot be harmed by conventional weapons. Vera can move like lightning and become invisible. What can the human do that we cannot? Jake waited for Thane to answer, but the commander was looking at him expectantly. Jake realized the question was directed at him. I adapt, Jake said simply. When things go wrong, I figure out what to do next. Zexthar made a sound that might have been laughter. All species adapt, human. Not like humans do, Thane said. Your species is unique in the galaxy. You have no special abilities, no evolutionary advantages, no natural weapons, but you survive anyway. You find ways to win that no one expects. The holographic display changed to show mission details. Drop zone coordinates, equipment lists, timeline. You deploy at 800 tomorrow, Thane said. The planet's surface is hostile. Dangerous weather, aggressive wildlife, unknown hazards around the target structure. Keep your eyes open and report everything you find. As the briefing ended and the squad members began to file out, Jake remained seated. He was thinking about what Thane had said. Humans were unique because they had no special abilities. It sounded like a joke, but the commander had been serious. Zexthar stopped at the door and looked back at Jake. Human, try not to slow us down. Tomorrow. We cannot complete the mission if we must constantly protect you. After everyone left, Jake sat alone in the empty briefing room, staring at the holographic planet that still rotated slowly above the table. In 18 hours, he would be on the surface of that world with 4 beings who could kill him without effort, investigating something that might be older than human civilization. He stood up and walked toward the door. Tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. All he could do was what humans had always done when faced with the impossible: adapt and survive. The shuttle dropped Alpha Squad onto the surface of Kepler 442b at dawn. Jake felt the ground shake as they landed in a small clearing surrounded by massive alien trees. The air was thick and humid, filled with the sounds of creatures he could not identify. Jake stepped out of the shuttle behind his squad mates. The gravity was slightly heavier than Earth normal, making his equipment feel heavier on his back. The sky was a pale orange color, and 2 small suns hung low on the horizon. Zexthar immediately took point, his 4 arms holding different pieces of equipment. His compound eyes scanned in all directions as he moved forward into the jungle. Vera disappeared from sight, her skin matching the green and brown colors of the forest. Jake knew she was somewhere ahead, scouting the path. Lyra walked beside. Rock. Her silver eyes closed as she used her telepathic abilities to sense for danger. The crystal being moved slowly but steadily, his heavy footsteps leaving deep prints in the soft ground. Jake brought up the rear, checking his compass and GPS unit every few minutes. The strange energy from their target was interfering with their electronics, making navigation difficult. Human, you are falling behind, Zexthar called over his shoulder. The Varaxian warrior had not slowed his pace since they started walking. Jake jogged to catch up, sweat already running down his face. How far to the target? 12 kilometers, Rock answered, his deep voice carrying easily through the jungle. At this pace, we will arrive in 3 hours. If the human can keep up, Vera's voice came from somewhere to their left, though Jake could not see her. They walked through the alien forest for 2 hours. Jake saw creatures that looked like flying snakes, flowers that moved when he got close, and insects the size of his fist. The jungle was alive with sounds and movement, but nothing attacked them. Jake wondered if the local wildlife was afraid of his squad mates or if something else was keeping the predators away. The trees began to thin as they approached their destination. Through gaps in the canopy, Jake could see the dark shape of the structure rising above the forest. It was massive, at least 100 meters tall, and seemed to be made of black metal that reflected no light. I can feel something, Lyra said suddenly, stopping in the middle of the path. There is a presence ahead, very old, very powerful. Zexthar raised his weapons. Hostile? I cannot tell. It is unlike anything I have encountered before. They reached the edge of the jungle and found themselves facing a wide clearing. In the center stood the structure they had seen from orbit. Up close, it was even more impressive and disturbing. The building seemed to shift and change when Jake looked at it directly. The angles were wrong somehow, as if it existed in more dimensions than his eyes could process. Readings are off the scale, Vera reported, reappearing near a cluster of scanner equipment she had set up. Energy output is increasing as we get closer. Jake pulled out his own scanner and frowned at the display. The numbers made no sense. According to his instruments, the structure was generating more power than a small star, but there was no heat signature and no radiation. We should establish a perimeter, Zexthar said. Observe the structure before we approach. They were setting up their equipment when the defense systems activated. Jake felt it first as a pressure in his head, like someone pushing against the inside of his skull. Then he heard his squad mates begin to scream. Zexthar, the unstoppable warrior, dropped his weapons and fell to his knees. His forearms wrapped around his head as he made sounds of pure terror. His compound eyes were wide with panic, and he was shaking like a leaf. Lyra collapsed completely, her body convulsing as her telepathic abilities turned against her. Silver light poured from her eyes and mouth as she writhed on the ground, overwhelmed by alien thoughts flooding her mind. Rock's crystal body began to crack. Thin lines of stress appeared across his chest and arms as some invisible force pressed down on him. The blue light in his veins flickered and dimmed. Vera tried to run, but only made it a few steps before she froze in place. Her skin shifted rapidly through different colors as her natural camouflage systems went haywire. She stood perfectly still, paralyzed by fear. Jake watched his squad mates suffer and waited for the same thing to happen to him. The pressure in his head was uncomfortable but not painful. He could feel something trying to get inside his mind, like fingers probing at a locked door. But the door stayed closed. While his teammates screamed and shook, Jake calmly walked to their equipment and began checking the scanner readings. The energy output from the structure had increased dramatically when the attack started. Whatever was doing this to his squad was coming from inside the building. Jake studied the structure more carefully. Now that he was not being affected by whatever was attacking the others, he could see details that had been hidden before. There were symbols carved into the metal surface, patterns that seemed to move and change as he watched. At the base of the building, he could see what looked like an entrance. He also noticed something else. The attack was not random. It was targeting specific areas of his squad mates' brains, the parts that made them special. Zexthar's warrior instincts had been turned into overwhelming fear. Lyra's telepathic gifts were being used against her. Rock's crystal structure was being stressed in ways that should have been impossible. Vera's enhanced reflexes had been frozen. But Jake's brain was different. Human brains were chaotic, messy things full of contradictions and random thoughts. There were no specific systems for the attack to target, no enhanced abilities to turn against him. Jake pulled out his tablet and began making notes. The attack had started when they got within 50 meters of the structure. It was strongest, near the main entrance, and it seemed to be some kind of psychic defense system designed to stop intruders by overwhelming their minds. He looked at his suffering squad mates and made a decision. He could not help them while the defense system was active, but maybe he could shut it down. Jake checked his weapons and equipment, then began walking toward the structure. Behind him, his squad mates continued to scream and shake, trapped in their own minds by an enemy they could not fight. The closer Jake got to the building, the stronger the pressure in his head became. But his human brain, evolved for survival in a chaotic world, adapted to the assault. The random, contradictory thoughts that made human minds so messy also made them resistant to attacks designed for more organized species. Jake reached the entrance and found it was already open, as if it had been waiting for him. Beyond the doorway, he could see a corridor that stretched into darkness. Strange lights moved along the walls like living things. He looked back at his squad one more time. They were depending on him now, the weak human they had planned to protect. Jake took a deep breath and stepped into the alien structure. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, everything changed. The walls around him began to glow with soft blue light, and Jake heard a voice speaking in a language he did not recognize. But somehow he understood what it was saying. "Welcome, Chaotic One, we have been waiting for you." Jake walked deeper into the alien structure, his footsteps echoing in the glowing corridor. The walls were covered with symbols that seemed to move and change as he passed them. The blue light grew brighter with each step, and the voice in his head became clearer. "You may proceed, human child, your companions cannot follow." Jake stopped walking. "Who are you? What did you do to my squad?" The corridor ahead of him suddenly opened into a vast circular room. In the center, a column of light appeared, and within it, a figure began to take shape. It was tall and thin, with features that reminded Jake of several different alien species he had seen. But there was something ancient about it, something that made his skin crawl. "I am the Guardian," the figure said. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I was created by the Forerunners to protect this place. Your companions suffer no permanent harm, but they cannot enter while their minds remain so organized." Jake kept his hand near his weapon, though he doubted it would do much good against a being made of light. "Organized? What does that mean?" The Guardian moved closer, floating just above the floor. "Each species in your galaxy has evolved along predictable paths. The Vraxians became perfect warriors. The Silani developed their mental powers. The Golem achieved unity with their crystal nature. The Zenthari perfected their physical abilities, all very neat, all very ordered. And humans? Humans are chaos." The Guardian's voice carried what might have been amusement. "You have no special abilities, no evolutionary advantages, no clear purpose. Your minds are filled with contradictions. You can be logical and emotional at the same time. You cooperate and compete with your own species. You are weak, yet you refuse to give up. You are fascinating." Jake looked around the room. The walls were covered with more symbols, and he could see doorways leading off in different directions. "What is this place?" "A repository. A vault. The Forerunners built it to store weapons that could destroy entire worlds. They hid these weapons here before they died out, hoping that someday a species worthy of such power would find them." The Guardian gestured, and images appeared in the air around them. Jake saw massive ships firing beams of energy that split planets in half. He saw entire star systems going dark as something consumed their suns. He saw wars fought on a scale that made human conflicts look like children playing with toys. "The Forerunners were very much like your Golem friends," the Guardian continued. "They achieved perfect order in their society. No war, no hunger, no suffering. Everything was logical and predictable. But when they faced a threat that required creative thinking, they failed. Their perfect minds could not adapt to chaos." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of threat?" The Guardian did not answer directly. Instead, it moved to stand directly in front of Jake. "The weapons stored here can end any war, destroy any enemy, protect any world. But they require a mind that can think in ways the Forerunners could not. A mind that can hold contradictory ideas without breaking. A mind that thrives in chaos. You want me to take control of these weapons? I want to test you first, to see if your species is ready for such responsibility. Your mind must prove it can handle what others cannot." Before Jake could respond, the room around him disappeared. He found himself standing in a familiar place, his hometown on Earth. But something was wrong. The sky was dark red and buildings were burning in the distance. People were running and screaming. "This is not real," Jake said aloud. "Reality is relative," the Guardian's voice replied. "This is a test of your mental strength. Can you make decisions when there are no good choices?" Jake saw a group of children trapped in a burning building. He also saw alien ships landing nearby, full of soldiers who would kill anyone they found. He could save the children, but doing so would reveal their location to the enemy. He could hide and let the children die, but save dozens of other people who were hiding nearby. In his mind, Jake could hear the children crying. He could also hear the alien soldiers getting closer. Time was running out. Jake made his choice. He ran toward the burning building. The scene changed. Now he was on a battlefield, commanding human soldiers against an overwhelming alien force. He had two options: retreat and save his men, or hold the line and let them die to buy time for civilians to escape. Again, Jake made his choice without hesitation. The scenes kept changing. Each test was harder than the last. Jake found himself making impossible decisions, weighing lives against lives, choosing between duty and compassion, between logic and emotion. Each time he chose quickly and moved on, not dwelling on the consequences. Interesting, the Guardian said as the tests finally ended. Jake found himself back in the circular room. Most species become paralyzed when faced with impossible choices. They seek the perfect solution that does not exist, but you simply choose and accept the consequences. Someone has to make the hard choices, Jake said. If you spend too much time thinking about what might go wrong, you never do anything at all. The Guardian was quiet for a long moment. The Forerunners could never understand this. They needed perfect information before they could act. When faced with an enemy that acted randomly, unpredictably, they could not respond fast enough. What enemy? It does not matter now. They are gone, and the Forerunners are gone with them. But other threats remain. Your galaxy is not as peaceful as your alliance believes. The Guardian gestured, and Jake saw images of vast fleets moving through distant space, ships unlike anything he had ever seen, heading toward Alliance territory. The Dominion approaches. Your conventional forces cannot stop them, but the weapons here could end the threat instantly. Jake stared at the images. The enemy fleet was massive, easily 10 times larger than anything the Alliance could field. You want me to take control of these weapons and use them against the Dominion. I want you to prove that humanity can be trusted with such power, that you will use these weapons to protect all species, not just your own. And if I refuse, then the weapons remain sealed and your galaxy faces conquest or destruction. Jake thought about his squad mates, still trapped outside by the Guardian's defenses. He thought about the billions of people living peacefully in Alliance space, unaware of the threat approaching. He thought about the responsibility being placed on his shoulders. "What's the final test?" he asked. The Guardian smiled, an expression that looked strange on its ancient features. "You must command the weapons in battle, not against a real enemy, but in simulation. You must show tactical brilliance while maintaining your moral compass. You must win without losing your humanity." The room around them began to change again, transforming into what looked like a starship bridge. Control panels appeared, showing the positions of the enemy fleet and the Alliance's defenses. "Begin when ready," the Guardian said. "The fate of your galaxy depends on the choices you make in the next hour." Jake looked at the controls, then at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy. Outside, he knew his squad mates were still suffering, waiting for him to find a way to save them. Beyond that, entire worlds full of innocent people were counting on him to find a solution. He took a deep breath and placed his hands on the alien controls. The weapons of the Forerunners responded to his touch, ready to reshape the galaxy according to his will. The final test had begun. Jake stared at the tactical display floating in front of him. The enemy fleet was massive, showing as thousands of red dots moving steadily toward Alliance space. His own forces were represented by a handful of blue dots, pitifully small in comparison. "The simulation begins now," the Guardian said. "You have 1 hour to stop the Dominion invasion. Use whatever means you deem necessary." Jake studied the display more carefully. The Dominion fleet was organized in perfect formations, moving in straight lines toward their targets. They had overwhelming numbers and superior technology. Any conventional battle would be a massacre. He touched one of the alien control panels. Information flowed into his mind, showing him the capabilities of the Forerunner weapons. Planet killers that could crack worlds in half. Star destroyers that could make suns go out. Reality benders that could change the laws of physics in local space. These weapons could end the war in minutes, Jake said. Yes, the question is how you choose to use them. Jake watched the enemy fleet advance. Behind them, he could see the Alliance worlds they were heading for. Billions of people lived on those planets. Humans, Vraxians, Solani, Golem, Zenthari, and dozens of other species, all of them counting on the Alliance military to protect them. He touched another control panel, and suddenly he could see inside the enemy ships. The Dominion soldiers were not like any species he had seen before. They were tall and thin with pale skin and black eyes. But what disturbed Jake was how they moved. Every soldier moved in perfect unison, like parts of a single machine. "They're not individuals," Jake said, realizing the truth. "They're all connected somehow. One mind controlling millions of bodies." The Dominion achieved unity by sacrificing individuality, the Guardian explained. Every member of their species shares the same thoughts, the same goals, the same limitations. They are efficient, but they cannot adapt when faced with the unexpected. Jake began to understand why the Guardian had chosen to test a human. The Dominion was like the Forerunners had been, too organized, too predictable. They would expect the Alliance to fight a conventional war, ship against ship, weapon against weapon. "What would happen if I used the planet killers against their homeworld?" Jake asked. The simulation responded to his question, showing him the results. The Dominion fleet would be recalled to defend their territory, but millions of innocent civilians would die. The war would continue, and both sides would use increasingly terrible weapons until entire sectors of the galaxy were destroyed. "Unacceptable," Jake said. He tried a different approach. What if he used the Star Destroyers to cut off the Dominion's supply lines? The simulation showed this would slow their advance, but they had enough supplies to complete their invasion before starving. Jake spent 20 minutes trying different combinations of weapons and tactics. Every solution involved massive casualties and destruction. The Forerunner weapons were incredibly powerful, but they were designed for total war, not for protecting civilians. "This is what happened to the Forerunners, isn't it?" Jake said suddenly. "They had all this power, but they couldn't figure out how to use it without becoming monsters themselves." "The Forerunners faced an enemy similar to the Dominion," the Guardian confirmed. "They chose to use their weapons in ways that destroyed both civilizations. I was programmed to prevent that mistake from happening again." Jake looked at the tactical display with new eyes. The problem was not how to defeat the Dominion fleet. The problem was how to end the threat without becoming the very thing they were fighting against. He studied the enemy formation again. Perfect order, perfect predictability. The Dominion's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. "Show me the Alliance communication networks," Jake said. The display changed to show the faster-than-light communication relays that connected all Alliance worlds. Jake could see the pathways information traveled, the relay stations that boosted signals across impossible distances. "I need to send a message," Jake said. "Not to the Alliance fleet, but to the Dominion commanders." "What message?" Jake began working with the controls, crafting something that had never been tried before. Instead of using the Forerunner weapons to destroy, he would use them to communicate. He would send the Dominion a message they could not ignore. "I'm going to show them exactly what these weapons can do," Jake said. "But not by using them to kill." Jake selected an empty star system between the Dominion fleet and Alliance space. Using the reality-bending capabilities of the Forerunner weapons, he began to reshape space itself. He created barriers of pure energy that stretched across entire solar systems. He built structures that defied physics, monuments to power that could be seen from light years away. In the center of it all, he placed a simple message in every language known to the galaxy: stop, talk, choose. The effect on the Dominion fleet was immediate. Their perfect formations broke apart as individual ships stopped to observe the impossible display. For the first time in their expansion, they encountered something they could not understand or predict. Jake opened a communication channel to the Dominion command ship. "I know you can hear me," he said. "I know you're all connected, all listening, with the same ears. I have weapons that can remake reality itself. I could destroy your entire fleet right now, but I won't." The response came quickly, in a voice that sounded like thousands of people speaking at once. "We do not understand. You have superior force. Why do you not use it?" because using it would make me no better than you. Instead, I'm offering you a choice. Turn around and go home and we'll forget this happened. Keep coming and I'll use these weapons to build walls around every world you want to conquer. You'll spend eternity trying to break through barriers that remake themselves faster. Then you can destroy them. The Dominion voice was silent for a long moment. In the simulation, Jake could see their ships holding position, no longer advancing. You would trap us, contain us. Only if you force me to. There's a better way. Your species achieved unity by giving up individuality. But unity and individuality don't have to be opposites. The Alliance proves that different species can work together without losing what makes them unique. Jake paused, then added, I'm human. My species has no special powers, no natural advantages. But we survived by learning to cooperate with others, while staying true to ourselves. We can teach you that balance if you're willing to learn. The simulation froze. Jake looked around and saw the Guardian watching him with what might have been surprise. Interesting solution, the ancient being said. You used the weapons as tools of diplomacy rather than destruction. You offered the enemy something they did not know they wanted. The Dominion isn't evil, Jake said. They're just limited. They can't imagine any way to achieve unity except through conquest. But humans learned long ago that the strongest societies are built on cooperation, not control. The Guardian moved closer. And if diplomacy fails? If they reject your offer and continue their attack? Jake looked at the tactical display one more time. Then I'll build those walls I promised. I'll use the Forerunner weapons to protect every Alliance world with barriers they can't break. And I'll keep those barriers up until they get tired of trying and decide to talk instead. You would contain an entire stellar empire indefinitely? If that's what it takes to protect innocent people, yes. But I don't think it will come to that. The Dominion conquered other species because they were predictable. But humans are chaos. We'll keep surprising them, keep offering them new possibilities, until they realize there's more to existence than perfect order. The simulation ended, and Jake found himself back in the circular room with the Guardian. The ancient being was looking at him with what Jake could only describe as approval. You have passed the final test, the Guardian said. The weapons are yours to command. Use them wisely. Jake felt the knowledge flowing into his mind, the understanding of how to control forces that could reshape the galaxy. But with it came a terrible responsibility. My squad mates are still trapped outside, Jake said. Can you release them now? Of course, they will have questions about what happened here. Jake nodded. I'll tell them the truth. That sometimes the best way to win a fight is to convince your enemy not to fight at all. The Guardian smiled. The Forerunners never learned that lesson. Perhaps your species will do better. Jake walked out of the ancient structure to find his squad mates slowly getting back to their feet. The psychic attack had ended the moment he gained control of the Forerunner weapons. Zexthar was shaking his massive head, trying to clear away the lingering effects of the mental assault. Human, the Vraxian warrior said, his voice uncertain for the first time since Jake had met him. What happened? One moment we were in agony, the next the pain simply stopped. Jake helped Lyra to her feet. The Solani's silver eyes were dim, and she moved like someone recovering from a serious illness. I felt you in there, she said weakly. Your mind touched something ancient and powerful, but you were not afraid. Rock's crystal body was still cracked, but the stress lines were slowly healing. The structure recognized you, he said in his deep, slow voice. It opened for you as it would not for us. Vera appeared beside them, her skin shifting nervously between different colors. What did you find inside, Jake? The energy readings went crazy while you were in there. Jake looked back at the dark structure behind them. It looked different, now less threatening. The symbols on its walls glowed softly, and he could feel the vast power sleeping within its depths, power that now answered to his will. I found answers, Jake said. And I learned why Alliance Command specifically wanted a human on this mission. Before he could explain further, their communicators crackled to life. Commander Thane's voice came through, urgent and stressed. Alpha Squad, respond immediately. We have a situation. Zexthar activated his comm unit. Alpha Squad here, Commander. We are secure at the target location. Thank the ancestors. Listen carefully. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching Alliance space. Dominion ships more than we've ever seen before. They'll reach our outer colonies in 6 days. We're recalling all units immediately. Jake's squad mates looked at each other with concern. The Dominion was a distant threat they had heard about in intelligence briefings but never faced directly. "Commander," Jake said, taking the comm unit from Zexthar. "This is Sergeant Miller. The situation has changed. I need to speak with Alliance. High Command immediately." "Miller? What are you talking about? Get back to the shuttle and prepare for immediate departure." "Sir, with respect, I can't do that. I have access to weapons that can stop the Dominion fleet, but I need authorization from the highest levels before I can use them." There was a long silence on the comm. When Thane's voice returned, it was carefully controlled. "Explain yourself, Sergeant." Jake looked at his squad mates who were staring at him with confusion and growing alarm. "The structure contains technology left by the Forerunners, weapons, capable of ending this war. But they only respond to human mental patterns. That's why I was assigned to this mission." "That's impossible," Vera said. "No one has found working Forerunner technology in over 1,000 years." "They hid it well," Jake replied. "And they designed it to be used only by a species chaotic enough to handle the responsibility." Thane's voice came through the comm again. "Miller, you're claiming you have access to planet-killing weapons?" "Yes, sir, and I know how to use them to stop the Dominion without causing massive casualties." Another pause. "Stand by, Alpha Squad. I'm patching you through to Admiral Kane." Jake waited while the connection was established. His squad mates gathered around him, their earlier dismissal replaced by uncertainty and something that might have been respect. Admiral Kane's voice was crisp and professional. "Sergeant Miller, I'm told you have information about Forerunner weapons. Explain quickly." Jake told the Admiral everything. The Guardian, the tests, the revelation about human mental patterns, and most importantly, his plan to stop the Dominion invasion. When he finished, there was a long silence. "You're asking me to believe that you can create energy barriers around entire planets?" Kane said finally. "I can do more than that, sir. I can demonstrate." Jake reached out with his mind, touching the vast power of the Forerunner weapons. In space above Kepler 442b, energy began to gather. Within minutes, a shimmering barrier surrounded the entire planet, visible even from the surface. "My God," Kane's voice was barely a whisper. "Confirm all stations, are you seeing this?" Voices crackled over the comm as observers throughout the system reported the impossible sight of a planet wrapped in pure energy. "The barrier is permeable to life support and communications," Jake explained. "But it will stop any weapon known to exist. The Dominion fleet could fire at it for 1,000 years and never make a dent. And you can do this to any planet in Alliance space? Every world they want to attack. I can have the barriers in place before the Dominion fleet arrives." Jake could hear Admiral Kane conferring with others. Finally, the Admiral spoke again. "Do it, Sergeant. Protect every world in their path. But I want you back here as soon as possible. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Over. The next 3 hours, Jake worked with the Forerunner weapons to create protective barriers around 12 Alliance worlds. Each barrier was invisible from space but impenetrable to any form of attack. His squadmates watched in amazement as their weakest member casually reshaped the defenses of an entire stellar region. When the Dominion fleet arrived 2 days later, they found every target protected by impossible defenses. Jake opened a communication channel to their command ship, just as he had in the simulation. "I told you to stop," he said simply. "Now you see what happens when you don't listen." The Dominion response was immediate and angry. They fired every weapon they had at the barriers protecting the Alliance worlds. The energy shields absorbed the attacks without even flickering. After 6 hours of futile bombardment, the Dominion fleet stopped firing. "We do not understand," came the familiar voice of thousands speaking as one. "Your defenses are impossible." "Nothing is impossible," Jake replied. "You just haven't learned to think creatively. You want these worlds? You'll have to go through me, and I can keep these barriers up forever." The negotiation that followed lasted 3 weeks. Jake spoke for the Alliance, using his unique understanding of the Forerunner weapons to demonstrate possibilities the Dominion had never imagined. He showed them how energy could be used to create, instead of destroy, how different species could work together without losing their identity. Slowly, carefully, he convinced them that cooperation offered more than conquest ever could. The final agreement established trade relationships between the Dominion and the Alliance. The Dominion would share their advanced manufacturing technology in exchange for Alliance knowledge of individual creativity and innovation. It was not perfect, but it was a beginning. Back aboard the Starforge, Jake found himself in the unusual position of being the most important human in the galaxy. Alliance Command had given him a new rank and unlimited authority over the Forerunner weapons. They wanted him to train other humans to use the technology, to create a new branch of the military dedicated to impossible solutions. "I still do not understand," Zexthar said as they sat in the ship's mess hall. "How did you know the Dominion would negotiate instead of fight?" Jake smiled. "Because humans are good at understanding other people's motivations. The Dominion wasn't evil, just limited. They conquered because they couldn't imagine any other way to achieve their goals. Once I showed them alternatives, they were smart enough to take them." Lyra leaned forward. "I can read your thoughts more clearly now. There is something you are not telling us." Jake nodded. "The Guardian warned me that the Dominion wasn't the only threat out there. There are other empires, other dangers that the Alliance will face. Some of them won't be interested in negotiation." "And then?" Rock asked. "Then we'll deal with each problem as it comes. That's what humans do best. We adapt, we improvise, we find ways to survive when everyone else says it's impossible." Vera's skin shifted to a warm gold color. "I owe you an apology, Jake. We all do. We thought you were the weak link in our squad." "I am the weak link," Jake said. "But sometimes being weak in the ways everyone expects makes you strong in ways no one sees coming." Zexthar stood and extended one of his 4 hands. "From now on, we protect each other. All of us." Jake shook the massive Vraxian's hand. "That's the human way. We're stronger together than apart." As the Starforge jumped to hyperspace, carrying them back to Alliance headquarters, Jake looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other threats were moving through the darkness, but for the first time since joining Alpha Squad, he wasn't worried about being the weakest member of the team. Because sometimes the galaxy needed chaos more than it needed strength. And chaos was something humans understood better than anyone else in the universe.